We're into the final of the Generation Cup. Magnus Carlsen, world champion, faces Arjun Erigaisi, the 19-year-old from India, who is just on fire at the moment. He's entered the top 20 in the world. I mean, one of the young Indian stars who's making great waves. So this is not an easy matchup for Magnus Carlsen. Let's see what happens. So this is the first game. They play over 2 days, by the way, 2 sets of 4 games. So this is the first game in the first set. Everything's symmetrical so far. And quite a cagey start from Carlsen. C4, of course, the normal move here, but he's just hanging back with C3. Not very theoretical. So it means if C5 comes, then, well, white might just take that pawn and try to hang on to it. So Erigaisi plays in a different way. A5, just gaining a bit of space. Bishop F4. So Carlsen likes these manoeuvring games. And he's feinting at playing Bishop H6, but after this move, he decides, okay, I just want to protect that knight and recapture with the other knight. So already, I mean, I would say that Carlsen was probably quite content with the position out of the opening because he has the 2 bishops. Very nice. You've got to love your bishops. Rook E8. And now he even put some pressure on in the centre. So although black is extremely solid here, this pawn blunts that light squared bishop. You never know when you're going to be able to get those bishops into play. Queen b6, rook d1, knight e4. Okay, that unleashes a bit of power into the centre, but still bishop e3. So that's preempting e5 with the bishop opposite the queen, which just nudges over to a6. And now knight e5. So Carlsen is battling for control in the middle. If that's taken, then you can see that he'll be able to capture here, and then this bishop comes into play. Whoops, somewhere like that. That's not so clear for black, not so easy. Those bishops look great. So Erigaisi played knight to f6 to support this one, but this looks pleasant for white now. These bishops are actually achieving something. They're preventing black from breaking in the middle. Knight d6 attacks pawn here, which advances. Again, I think Carlsen would have been very pleased to see this. He has really good central control. He played f4 here. Not the only way to go, but I mean, this feels very nice just to get control here. And it's really important, of course, when white advances with these pawns, you can see it creates a big hole here on e4. So it's very important that that bishop on g2 and the queen on c2 control that e4 square, preventing the knight hopping into e4. So Carlsen is in control in this position. That knight is quite nicely placed after this move. I mean, Carlsen could have pushed that away, but now, well, using this nice central control, then he starts to expand on the king side. This looks very nice. I mean, it's a little bit like a Stonewall Dutch, where everything's gone very well indeed. You never know when this pawn might come good if this pawn on a2 disappears, and maybe you could use this later on this square, but white, it doesn't trouble white at the moment at all. Rook c1, that's quite a careful move. So Carlsen is basically preempting this pawn move b6, making sure this doesn't happen because c6 will fall. So knight d7, trying to challenge that knight, and that's a reasonable move. And here, well, it would have been best to exchange that off and just challenge with f6. Just break this down. And black is still in the game. You know, that's quite double-edged. But Erigaisi played e6, and here, yeah, Carlsen should just bring that knight back. Instead, Carlsen played a very natural move. This is rapid play. You play what looks good. You haven't got time to work everything out. So have a think with black in this position. How would you play with black? What's the best way for Erigaisi to play this position? Cheers, folks. He played what looks like a very normal move, pawn to f6. But after the knight came back to f3, well, we'll see what happened, but basically white still has control there. Erigaisi said after the game that he had seen the move g5, but kind of dismissed it he didn't take it too far in his calculation. This is a great counter-attacking move. He said, you know, he didn't quite believe it. He'd actually seen it, but this is a great move because if bishop takes, then f6. So that forks both these. If knight takes d7, then pawn takes here. The knight has to move again. You take here, and you can see that white does not have great control here with the knight looking at d4, the bishop looking at the knight on e5. Suddenly black is back in the game. Yes, white can hold it together, but still, this is quite a playable position for black. So g5 would have been a great counter-attacking move, and if pawn takes, then you could take here, and again, black has shaken white's central control. But instead f6 came, and white is now very comfortably placed. This is a big space advantage. It's really pleasant. Black can't break out. Queen a5, bishop f1, good move. Looking at that knight, but also looking perhaps to redeploy the bishop here. Knight came back. g5. You know, Carlsen, I was watching the game live, and Carlsen played this move so quickly. And I think that's what's very impressive about the world champion, that he makes these big strategic decisions very quickly. You know, here I'd be thinking, well, what happens if f5? You know, I'd want to work this out in detail because now the position on the king side is closed. You know, do you have enough play on the other side of the board? Well, the answer is definitely yes, but it's the fact that he played this in seconds. So this didn't happen, I should say, that after g5, Erigaisi played knight f6. But let's have a look at f5. Basically, white turns to the queen side. If the queen goes back, then rook b1, you can bring the rooks up, even the queen as well, potentially, to target. The queen will step back here, you target the a pawn. Or you can simply push through with b5, that looks very nice. And if queen takes, then you take on b7, and suddenly there's a threat to bring the bishop back to hit the queen. This pawn is going to be terribly weak. It's better for white. So g5 was absolutely correct and very well judged by Carlsen. But as I said, it's the speed of his decision making which is so impressive. Knight d7 played instead, and now Carlsen exchanged. This one is easier to understand because here, having knocked out the f-pawn, then black is never going to play e5. White has won the e5 square for the knight, and then it's time to attack these two pawns. This is a very well-known position, structurally well-known. And the bishop comes here. Again, very important that that knight is prevented from coming to e4. And now Carlsen can simply target these two pawns, and this is the kind of kingside attack that just is so automatic. Basically, you just double on the g file. Potentially, you could triple on the g file actually, but because white has this wonderful square for the knight, I mean, white is in control here, and basically, you know, white's has all this space, and this sacrifice is just automatic. Black just can't recover from this, and yeah, this is like a pile driver on the king side. I mean, black can, however black plays, this is just losing. For example, if king h8, let's step out of the way. This didn't happen, but let me just show you very quickly. Here's just an example. Knight comes to e5. You know, every single one of white's pieces is directed to the king side. Queen steps back. Rook g4. Okay, let's put the queen on g3. I mean, this is so slow motion, but that knight can't move. If the knight can't move, obviously there's rook g8 mate, and if the knight can't move, then these rooks and the queen, of course, cannot counter these pieces. And little by little, okay, the knight comes in, grab that one. Let's say black waits. Well, I mean, white is just going to crawl in here. I mean, you can take that pawn. That drops. You know, that's the end. So what about, let's see, instead of that, knight f8. Let's try this. Well, now the pieces come in, and now there's going to be a fatal check here, or this one. You can take that here. I mean, this is just a typical variation. The king simply cannot escape. So after this, well, king h8 wasn't played, but knight e4 played. Knight g5. Carlsen plays in a very simple way. He could have just played knight e5, could have done several other things, but he just decides, okay, I want to exchange this one off. He's just confident that he's going to win this one. So threat, rook h5, followed by queen h7 check, and takes here. And there's no defense, so Carlsen just avoids an exchange. At the threat, again, just rook h4 and queen h7 check. There's no defense. If this knight can't move, I repeat, the black rooks cannot come across to exchange. They can't defend. So this is the game. And queen takes e6 was the final move. So it's now 3 pawns. But I mean, the pawn count isn't the thing. It's 3 pawns for the piece, but point is, white has broken through. Erigaisi resigned. Well, let's see exactly why he resigned. If, for example, well, let's say rook f6, you can take the knight here. And there's a pin. Okay, so instead of that, what if the king steps out of the pin? Well, you can just take here, because that rook on f5 hangs. So now white is 3 pawns up, and this one will not last very long. However, black recaptures, then white is going to be able to force an exchange of queens. And 3 pawns up in the king and pawn endgame. That is a very easy win, of course. So a crushing first game win for Carlsen. Strategically, you know, he played beautifully. Couple of moments, Erigaisi could have played better. So here, this is the critical moment. He could have taken here and played f6 and shaken white's central control. And then a move later, he missed this stab g5. And I think somehow, you know, at this critical moment, he didn't take enough time, or he lacked confidence, or something went wrong for Erigaisi. And apart from that, Carlsen was just in impressive style, imperious style, great control. Okay, I'm just going to show you the end of game 2. This was another very impressive game. Well, Carlsen had castled queenside in a Gioco Piano. It was an extraordinary game, but I just want to show you the finish. He's broken through here. Now, Erigaisi does not need to take that rook. He's under pressure, but taking is a mistake. He took. But it's kind of understandable, because he got to this position And actually, this is really tricky. At first glance, you kind of think, that king looks so exposed. The queen and knight attacking very nicely. And it looks like black is winning with, let's say, knight g4 threatening a mate here, threatening a mate here. In fact, white has knight c6 check. This did not happen. And this is checkmate like this. But also like this. Wow. So knight g4 in this position would actually lose to this move knight c6. And you could see, well, Carlsen suddenly paused and he invested some time in this position, because this is absolutely deadly and the king is suddenly looking a bit exposed at the other end. So what did he do? Well, have a think. How would you play here with black? Black to play. What did Carlsen come up with? Now this is really impressive, I have to say. He found the only move to win. Everything else is losing. What was Carlsen's move in this position? Cheers. He found knight d5. Now that is a really unlikely move. Retreating that beautiful knight. It wins. White cannot defend this position. So the game finished like this. Bishop takes knight. And now knight g4 is winning, threatening those two different checkmates. And notice how the bishop blocks the d file. I mean, this is like a study. So knight c6 has absolutely no effect whatsoever, because there's no rook d8 follow-up. So after knight g4, after this move, threatening two different checkmates, Erigaisi had to resign. I mean, this move is sensational. And Carlsen admitted later that he hadn't realised that his position was actually on the edge here. But he invested the time and found the win. Incredible. So Carlsen started with 2-0, and in the third game he managed to, well, he scored a draw. I mean, he actually should have won the third game. But yeah, so he wins the first set. They play a second set tomorrow. Erigaisi must win that second set to force a tiebreak. Let's see what happens. Anyway, I shall report back. Thanks for watching.